All right. I have returned. I have returned at last. I have some chat to catch up on, and then we'll get started. Crying what law? You need to apply for colleges for it, agents, editors. Yeah. It dies in your basement. Aloe water. Immortality. Yes, when I get down to editing, I have to use aloe. It opens up the flow of thoughts in a bit more of an advanced fashion. Alright, but without further ado, I want to make sure I can give you the most time and attention I can. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Excited to check out. I like that you put a little beta reading chapter in here, or a little intro. Content warning. Yes, detailed gore, murder, violence, torture, child abuse, death of family members, suicide, rape, sexual assault, depression, drug abuse, alcoholism, mental disorders. Let me know, and I will understand. We brave the darkness together. We are not afraid of such things. Crystal Palace, questionnaire. So nice, good job. What are your thoughts on the title? What genres do you usually read? Oops. I mean, you just had to read this book. Cool, I'll get into those later. I can answer those. What are your thoughts on the book's title? Crystal Palace. Good, a little bit vague. So I don't know what kind of world this is. I know it's obviously fantasy, but it could be sci-fi. A little vague, but good. I think evocative. Genres usually I read sci-fi, fantasy. I read a lot of literary fiction. I read a lot of everything because reading is writing. Why did you decide to beta read this book? Well, because I'm Final Boss, and that's what I do. I'm really 300 years old, but this is how I stay alive. The Premier League fanfic. Yeah, so I probably will change it. Okay. Chapter 1. So I'm going to put the chat bar over here, and then I can add my notes accordingly. I'm just going to test it here. Test. Put that on suggesting in case I make some changes. All right. How much are we editing tonight? Probably 5 to 10 pages. This isn't a pretty single-spaced and typeset, so that's going to be a lot, 5 to 10 pages. My guess is that we'll probably have a pretty good sense of the most important part of the book, which is the beginning and how it's going, and then maybe hopefully I can be able to give you some advice on how to affect and change scene pacing. Usually scene pacing issues are throughout, and then any prose issues like balancing interiority. So we'll see. I want to try to get at least 5 pages done, hopefully up to 10. But these are in Calibri 12, which is a pretty small font, so it will take. That's no joke. So I'm gonna try to get started and get as much as I can done. Sometimes Roy wished the conspiracy theories of a meteor coming to destroy Earth were true. At least then, for a moment in time, everyone on the planet would be equal. The superiors, the managers, well-off, the poor, the homeless, in a blink of an eye, all would perish. Ooh, beware spell checks in the first paragraph. Dying as peers, the great equalizer he would call the meteor. Good. Starting with sometimes is, I would say, risky. It weakens whatever you're trying to say. I would just go bloop. I'm going to do more edits on the first few paragraphs because I feel like these are the most important. Roy wished the conspiracy theories of a meteor coming to Earth were true. At least then, for a moment in time. I think in time is overstating. You can just say for a moment. Everyone on the planet. At least then, for a moment, everyone on the out of the conspiracy theories. Yeah. I do agree. Yeah, it's just extremely okay. I'll just yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's a good note though, because that could be over detailing if it doesn't factor in later. Everyone on the planet would be equal. See, that's why it's nice to have the writer around, because you can just be like, hey, like, what do you mean? Everyone on the planet would be equal. The superiors, the managers, well off. You're kind of this may be the conversion from Microsoft Word to Google Docs, but the dashing seems kind of odd here. Everyone on the planet would be equal. This might even be a colon. Superiors, managers, well off, the poor, the homeless. I don't think you need a ellipsis. Homeless period. In the blink of an eye, all would perish, dying as peers. The great equalizer, he would call the meteor. I would just say the great equalizer, the meteor. He would call is kind of obvious in him calling it the meteor. So those types of language loops, I do this a lot. So I've been practicing recognizing them in my writing. So I may pick out more of these. But that would be kind of a way to optimize this first paragraph. Wishful thinking is what he should call it. That's a little bit heavy. I would just say wishful thinking. Period. Boom. You're in his mind. So this is one of those things that the grammar tools can't, like the auto edit or whatever they're called, will have a tougher time telling you, is that character thought and character dialogue are very similar. So the things a character is thinking can have the same pacing and cadence of dialogue, which means you can use fragments, you can use varied sentence structure, as long as it sounds like it's coming from the character's voice. So wishful thinking is what he should call it, is a thought he's having. But what he's really thinking in his head is wishful thinking. That's it. So those types of cuts can, one, reduce your word count, which is always nice. And two, speed up the read and make it feel like we're getting more access to the character. So it's doing that. I think that cut, I wanted to stop and talk about it because I think it's serving a lot of purposes. He remembered that night. The night had changed his life. He wished to the stars that it was true. He wanted to die, for everyone on the planet to be taken with him. He wished to the stars it was true. It's a more immediate thought, yeah. He remembered that night. Yeah, so something about... Yeah, you're much closer to the character. So, this may change 667, but something about opening on a memory is a little bit... It's hard, right? Because then it's like, why didn't we just start on that night? Beware of opening the story on a memory. Is there perhaps an in-scene way of showing this? Memories inherently have less drama because they've already happened and the character is still survived. So that's the thing. Like you open on the memory, you cut your drama. Because we already know he's here remembering it, so he obviously made it, and things turned out okay because he's at least able to think and like stuff like that. So beware or think. It was strange to consider. In hindsight, we already know we're in his memory. It was a strange thing to consider. Wow, I'm losing. Okay. He'd been a mess of a man. I would be more specific. Had been a raving alcoholic, whatever. That's an example. Like, obviously, you don't, if he's not, like, had been a raving alcoholic. calling into the cosmos like a child wishing for presents the night before Christmas. So this is very image heavy language. Abstract can be effective, but needs a lot of concrete stuff happening around it to ground it in the reality of the scene. Kind of what that note says, I'll kind of restate it, maybe an easier way to grok it, would be using abstract language. Like, he loved her like the sun and the stars and the moon. Like that, or even just he loved her. The word love can mean a lot of things to different people. It's sort of like saying, yeah, also, yeah, I agree. I'm gonna copy. I'm just gonna copy and paste whatever Fiction My Diction says, because he is also a really fantastic editor. You guys, if you don't follow him already, you should follow him. He's going to do some of the items on the queue because he is a fantastic editor, and his advice is very good. So listen. When Dan Boss has notes, listen. Roy wore the standard multi-corpse, Fiction My Diction. Sorry, Dan Boss is the old ways. We've killed the old gods. Well, broken clock is right twice a day. But that abstract language is really risky because it makes that sense that you're withholding something. So you're using this epic, grandiose language to describe a feeling he's having. We don't have any concrete way of understanding it. And so it feels like it's withholding, for one, because it's like this thing, I don't know where this cosmos, child wishing for presents emotion is coming from. I don't know how he called him the cosmos, so it's very abstract. So there's a lot of ways, like I can call into the cosmos by raising my hands. I can call into the cosmos by falling on my knees. So every reader will envision that, because it's a non-specific image. I would actually, I'm going to put another note, which is like, make this particular thing, make this more concrete. How did he call into the cosmos? Because it's sort of like, it's sort of like when someone says, imagine a dog. We can even do this in chat. Everybody, I'll wait a few seconds because it'll be a delay. Everybody type in a dog. Like, what do you imagine? What do you imagine when you imagine a dog? You're probably going to get, I'll just keep going because who cares? But you're probably going to get a lot of different answers, like, furry, tall, whatever. But if you're like, imagine a Schnauzer, which is a very specific dog. Exactly, but he was thinking Great Dane, I was thinking Schnauzer, which is so right. That's exactly the point, because I was not being specific. I had a too high up the level of abstraction, because dog is actually a very abstract concept. So especially when you're establishing things in the beginning, when you're anchoring the reader, you have to be so specific. You can't say dog, you have to say Great Dane. You can't say house, you have to say Victorian manor. Like, you can't say chair, you have to say, plush leather couch. That is going to just root us in the word cat. Rebellious. Coeno. But that's that's what I'm saying. Calling into the cosmos is like saying dog. A lot of ways people call into the cosmos. So you need to give us this concrete imagery. I would still say the biggest and most important note, I think the biggest problem right now is that we're opening on a memory. I think this this is the biggest issue that I think is causing all these other sub issues. So I won't beat a dead horse too much, but because you're opening on a memory, you're cutting the tension out of your current scene. Because it's a memory, you're giving it only through the character's thoughts. So you're giving us, his thoughts, which is inherently withholding some data from us, which we need. And you're not drawing a scene with concrete imagery as well. So I think that is the thing that I would consider maybe just making whatever this memory is. I don't even know what it's kind of entailing right now. I would make that memory just be the start. Maybe. We'll see. I'm going to go on. And I'm going to go faster. I'm going to go, yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very true. I'll put that in the, I'm trying to save as much as I can of Dan Bosta's notes because they're usually really good. Paste as plain text. All right. That will sound weird, but whatever. Roy wore the standard multi-corps issue uniform provided by those above. A yellow flashlight-wielding helmet, white undershirt, industrial-grade work boots, blue overalls. So good. These are all really concrete images. His stomach extended well over his utility belt. And he wiped the sweat from his brow and grasped the end of his pickaxe with his calloused hands while staring to the abyss that was mine 237. His pace quickened with violent force as he recalled his wife's transgressions. Pitiful. That's all had been. And her? She was nothing but a siren, straight from the pages of Odyssey, warning him not to get too close. So, one, I am the biggest fan of one-word sentences. They're so powerful, if not overused, but yay, one-word sentences. They just are like, they're very powerful, but they're just like punching the reader in the mouth. So it's really good. It gives us a lot of access to that character. That's all had been in her. So one, the fact that a construction worker or a mine worker knows what a siren is and what the Odyssey is tells me a few things about your world. It tells me it's set somewhere around modern day and in this universe because the Odyssey exists. This person is educated, so he knows about it. So this is a really good fact. This is giving me a lot of details. Giving me a lot of details about the character. Good. Like, he's educated. We're in this universe. In a universe with the Odyssey. And then he's like poetic. Right, so he's comparing himself to this, like, it's so horrible, Odysseus. The one thing is he does get the reference wrong. Because the sirens actually tempt you to run your ship into rocks. So I don't know if that's intentional. Or if, hey, it's been a while since, you've read the Odyssey. Both are fine. Something to be aware of. If it's intentional, great. That tells me, yeah, that's true. So I would say that's a very good decision. Using that illusion, it does a lot of work. So those types of things, those details, are the things the character is thinking that can tell us multiple things at once, like the world we're in. This is why those concrete details are so powerful. Because by saying the Odyssey and the fact that he knows it tells us the world we're in, tells us about the character, tells us about his mental state, tells us about his kind of ambiance, tells us about and foreshadows more mythological aspects. So that's why concrete details are so powerful, because they carry and they do so much work. And that works because it's a concrete detail. The sirens from the Odyssey. Very specific. His life hadn't always remembered suffocating fog carrying him towards death. In fact, he once had his own dreams and a positive outlook. But that was before the mass exodus. Thinking back to those times brought a hint of joy to his day. So, a term that I don't know. I can guess what this term means, but it feels a little too vague. It's okay to pause, go into narrative on super important things. This may not be important. Yeah. Yeah, I'm also agreeing with that note. I might copy that one in as well. Yeah, so that's good. So there's a few options, 667. One is we want you as the writer will want to answer the question, and this is a tough thing about fantasy and sci-fi. It's how much of the world building and backstory do I want to reveal when? So right now you're choosing to treat it very lightly, mentioning the name and moving on. That's fine. Just make sure that that's how much you want the reader to know right now. Thinking back to those times brought a hint of joy, so we get how the character feels about it, which is good. Although he tried not to dwell too much on the past. He had a job to do. Darkness engulfed Roy and his fellow men as they chipped their lives away into nothingness. So why is he so happy about the mass exodus? So I feel like his emotions are kind of like he's angry, he's joyful, and now he's chipping his life away. Yeah. So I think you're stumbling upon an issue that I have with my novel, where I have a lot of world building. I'm in the first chapter, and I'm just trying to shove as much of it in as possible so I can get on with my story. So that is bad. I do it all the time. But we're jumping around a lot, right? So we start with Roy, conspiracy theories, wishing the Earth was destroyed. We go back to him being in the uniform in the mine, and then now in the uniform in the mine, he's remembering the mass exodus. He's chipping his life away. He's angry at his wife. So we've gone in in the space of a few hundred words. We've gone a pretty long distance. And I would think that this goes kind of what I was saying in the beginning, where I was like, hey, what can you kind of expect from this edit? I'm going to talk a little bit about you might want to think about your scene structure and how you want to build this, because I feel like right now I think you may be well served by picking one of these scenes and just drilling into it. Paint the picture. What does the world look? We kind of get these little one sentence bits of the mind, but what does it smell like? What does it feel like? Make me feel like I'm there, and then expand outward. I feel like you're trying to just take everything and shrink it into one moment, where you might be better served starting with one moment, really building our relationship with the character first. Have me just be on his day, really plugged into his day in the mine first, and then zoom me out, and then zoom me out. So it's sort of like in film, where you have your establishing shot and then you go in, or you start with a close up and you go out. You're looking for that type of direction, and I feel like we're really depressed hates his life because of something that happened with his wife and is now stuck in a mine working a nothing job. Yeah. Yeah. So, I would establish the mine up in the front. I would establish the scene first because the problem is up here. I thought because I didn't know what Roy looked like. I didn't know what, and this is the challenge with being like a little bit vague. Uh, I didn't know what the scene around him was, so I thought it was a kid in his room on his bed wishing that he got hit by. So I thought it was just like a kid lying in bed hoping that the world got destroyed by a meteor. So later I realized that Roy was older and all this stuff. But I would start with because it sounds like he's still in scene. So I thought this mine because we have remembered that night over here. Remember that night that changed his life. So I thought we went back into a memory. So like I would boof, this goes. I would cut that. Yeah. He wiped the sweat from his brow, pace quickened at the violent force. They'd been here and her, nothing but a siren. So I've had noise remember the suffocating fog. Thinking, we don't need memories right now. So I'm gonna be a little bit intense. Darkness engulfed Roy as he felt immediately stripped their lives. He stripped the wall. Because, we get how crappy his life is. You do such a good job evoking this scene of how crappy it is being in the mines. Don't interrupt that. Let him, this is something that I'm working on a lot with interiority and, the character's thoughts and not interrupting the flow with what's going on in the character's head and, kind of breaking it into more chunks for the reader. So you have this great scene of him, envisioning everyone getting dyed, and then he's in a uniform. So, these extra bits are just kind of interrupting this great scene you have, and kind of keeping us at the surface and not letting us dip in and sink in. Darkness engulfed Roy. He struck at the wall with his apps. Yeah. Not that it took too long. Just a handful of controlled blows. He panted for air, then slumped against the tunnel wall, let himself slide to the ground in a seated position. Making sure he flipped his flashlight off. 2 long weeks to go before he would get another chance at relocation. Though he didn't know if he would make it, it was a question he asked himself several times a day, trying to get his hopes up. I would try to show this. Yeah. I would also say that you're a little bit light on conflict. So it's a bad situation, but there's not much conflict. Consider, and maybe that can be something you work into the dialogue or whatever, but consider having some conflict. Like a jerk foreman refusing his relocation request and him protesting, with how hard he's worked or whatever. Coughs echoed throughout the chamber. I see conflict with the superiors, yeah. Conflict echoed through the chamber in a constant call and response. Working these minds. Do understand caused health problems. Was it? Oops. Yeah. Learn to survive. That's just an example, but yeah, that's true. You probably don't even need my little rephrase. Anyways, Roy hacked a deep, hearty cough. Hacked a deep cough. Hacked. Nah. He pulled himself back to his feet and switched his flashlight back on. He wondered what his wife was up to. Probably fooling around with one of the neighbors again. So why does he care about his family? Oops. It sounds like he cares about feeding his family in the above paragraph, but he seems to hate them. These seem at odds. The thought of lying next to the man fueled his next strike to the rock. Knocking plethora of earthworms poked their heads, some torn in half from the impact, while others inched their way. What a great specific image. What a great... I like that image. It's an awesome image. Keep that. So specific, concrete, visual. I could see it. That was awesome. That's a good image. On more than one occasion, Roy for his wife's infidelities. It's true. What a little floozy. What a floozy. All members of Squad 237. But this is also like, I want to hear one of his co-workers give him crap about his hoe wife, or see his conflict with her. Don't just tell me it's there. I want to watch a conversation. Yeah, so that's one thing. And you may have to wait, right? So like this is page 1. We may not need to get into all the wife stuff right now, or maybe we only need to hint at it because we're getting pretty specific. So like you're giving us like all you're giving us all you as the writer know about it, right? So you're giving us a lot of these details, but we may not need them right now because 2, they could be better used perhaps in a scene that's generated conflict, like that, like if he's like chipping away at the rock and they're like, hey, how's like Sandra doing, and she's still like laying backwards like, fuck you, that's my wife, like, that's like conflict. And then we see the world and we see how he interacts with it, so we get to know him better. Because one character if someone was talking about one character's wife in that way and saying, hey, your wife says, kind of sleeps around, one guy might just punch him in the face, and that means he's a very aggressive character. That'll do characterization for you. Somebody else may, just swallow his sadness and keep picking sadly, and that would be a different character, right? So that conflict, and by bringing these facts into a scene and making dialogue and action out of them, can do double duty. It can show the character more. It can show how he reacts to stuff. And then you can pay that characterization off later and, having him change and react to a similar situation in the opposite way. We get something later on about why he and his wife are having problems. Not a lot, just so it's like, not just goes how it feels necessary for the relationship. Yeah. All members of Squad 237, please remember to report to Central Headquarters in 15 minutes for our scheduled meeting. Voice blared from the intercom. I repeat, all members of Squad. Acting as a catharsis for his miserable life. I think we kind of know this. Maybe just be like, Each impact released a great deal of built-up negative energy until tears rolled down his dust-covered cheeks. So he seems like a tough guy. I don't see him crying. I see. Yeah. His romantic at heart still loves her and wants her deep down. Gotcha. Okay. Let me see. Reaching up for his helmet flashlight, he wiped his eyes clean with the soot-covered sleeves, creating a muddy streak across his face, but cleaning the blurred vision his tears had caused. His light flickered twice as it ran low on battery, illuminating the pitch darkness around him in two sudden flashes. On the bulb's third flicker reflected something in the dirt below, which caught his eye. The flashlight continued to cut out, causing him to second guess what he had seen. You already do, so you're saying, and this is called verbal doubling, which is very common. It's nothing bad. Just means you gotta, slice things up a little bit. But you're kind of saying the same thing twice here, right? Only need one. Easy fix. Pick the best one. So you're saying it caused him to second guess, and then you show him second guessing. So I'm going to choose the one that shows and doesn't tell. So his flashlight continued to cut out, period. Maybe his eyes are playing tricks. So you see how removing that verbal doubling, increases the speed of the read a lot and makes it more and we chose the better one, right? Because this was a telling, so causing him to second guess what he's seen. This is access to his interior thoughts, which is showing us that he is second guessing. Maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me, So yeah, I think that's stronger. To click, he loosen. I would also break up your paragraphs a little bit more. His light flickered twice. On the bulb's third flicker, it reflected something in the dirt. His flashlight continued to cut out. Turn the light. Yeah, so that's how I would kind of break up your action. Make sure that each paragraph is like a beat of action. So it's okay to have smaller paragraphs. What your English teacher said about 2 sentences per paragraph is a lie. It's a total lie. So yeah, feel free to be as aggressive or not as you want there. I'm going to do this. Okay. 11:46. I gotta get moving. I wanted to get some pages done. The English teachers have been hamstringing authors for millennia. Curse them, they're liars. They lie to you. Its sides were asymmetrical. Yeah, perfectly smooth and numbered in more than a dozen. And numbered more than a dozen. Perfectly smooth sides. So is it like a crystal? Perfectly flat? I would do, so this is what J.K. Rowling does a lot. She does an establishing, like, and it's really helpful for sci-fi and fantasy for that reason. Oh my gosh, my eyes going bad. I might light up my hot pack again here. I'll continue my train of thought. Um, but what she does is she will establish the paragraph's kind of point with a one short blurb, and then she'll go into more detail. So it'll be like, Harry loved Diagon Alley. The bright shops reminded him of the days of relaxation and joy he spent with his friends. The delicious treats always warmed his belly, and the smell of treacle tarts made him joyous. Like, so she gives the anchor, which is he loves it here, and then she gives you this like detailed view. I think for this, especially introducing a new item, you need to do that. He lifted some sort, some circular gem out of the ground. So that's our anchor. Its sides are, then you go into the details. Sides were asymmetrical yet perfectly smooth, flat, numbered more than a dozen. Clasping it in both hands, you could, visualize. Okay, that's not. I don't need that anymore. It weighed and resembled the size of a baseball, of which Roy knew full well the dimensions, having played many a game in his day. So that's kind of a digression. So, not that he was any good. It weighed and resembled a baseball. Made of pure crystal, whatever. Placed this in his pocket and smoothed out his pants so not to look suspicious. And groups of men flitted into central headquarters, filed into central headquarters for a meeting. Regarding who knows what and who cares. I like that. The only real reason anyone was eager for attendance was for the wonderful air conditioning system they installed a few years back. Each laborer looked almost identical to Roy, wearing the same shirt, hat, overalls, and boots. That's fine. The only difference between the individual hair color and facial hairstyles. Everybody's got mustaches. But the more four major chambers been full of smaller. So I'm starting to go faster so I can maybe do more some early structure stuff. Well, bye, boss. Rip. Sorry, my water was boiling for my little eye patch, my little eye treatment thing. It's still too hot though. Fluorescent lighting lined the hallway. By the time I passed through, they were dusted off in yellow and brown color. Sleek camera hung every few hundred feet to keep an eye on the masses trudging through. Make sure everyone kept quiet and in line as they passed. Everyone knew better than to speak to the halls unless specifically told to do so. So then they start speaking. So let someone immediately starts speaking. Oh, Kyle does. Okay, maybe Kyle's kind of a weirdo, but yeah, that I would just show that. I would just show that. Um, because he's an idiot. Nice. Freaking Kyle. Damn it, Kyle. I'm good, said Roy, ignoring Kyle. But I see them in terms of energy, like emotion that builds and builds, almost like a cloud. Somewhere that's haunted, like walking through a cloud of energy, you know? How interesting. He and James would get along just great. James. Could bring unwanted. He could be often found spreading rumors, laughing at misfortunes of others. Well, I believe in him, Cal said, chuckling. Okay. How interesting. I thought so. It either clicks with you or it doesn't, man. You never got the feeling that something was there before? Can't say that I have. Every person has their own perspective of things, you know. So if you can resonate with the energy, you can feel the ghost. That's my take anyway. Can we talk about this later? Roy motioned ahead to the camera as Kyle winked. Ghosts. Hilarious. Kyle was always talking some batshit idea. And glass interest. Each time the superiors held an unannounced meeting in a lavish hall, the men would soil every square inch of the place. The cleaning bill after such meetings would be ungodly. Not that the superiors liked the funds to cover it. With only a few seats left empty, Roy and Cal found their way to the front room to sit. Those who were lucky enough to arrive first occupied the very back in order to avoid being used in demonstrations or questioned during the meeting. Roy sat in the most inconspicuous chair he could find. He slumped down, nestled between the chart. Opening ceremonies. Alright, later fiction. I'm probably going to follow suit soon here, but I want to get a little bit further. We know James. Oh, yeah. Is that from Fiction's, is that from Fiction, My Diction's book? I think I remember. Was there a character named James in your book? I don't remember. I think so. Maybe. Yeah. Thought so. The usual conglomerate. Someone says yes, one says no. Who to believe? Who do we believe? Oh, nice. Character name. Character name's the hardest, man. I can never think of good names. Find the way to the front of the room to sit. Sad bulbous nose would show to the front. Only fingers trying to reach down. Microphone. He's such a weak-looking person. Being such occupied by beefy workers is beyond Roy. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'll put that in, yeah. Apply it to anything society would only need to lead to stiff drink or a stronger bond for nihilistic worldview. Law. Oops, whoa, misclick alert. Later fiction. Per tradition, the crowd continued to cheer, and they grew more animated, and everyone's probably wondering why you brought you into a meeting for such short notice. I try to stream when I get home from work. Nice. Hopefully see you soon. I know, okay, how much this meeting. We've received some vital news from the superiors above earlier today. Instead of keeping it a secret, I thought I'd inform each and every one of you directly. How wonderfully thoughtful of him. It had been 5 years since his last vacation, and the president wanted praise for delivering news from beyond the atmosphere. News that probably had no real effect or impact on his own day-to-day life. Double shifts were likely in the mix, as they always were. But double shifts do impact his everyday life. All will be phrased. Loud mumble of complaints and curses. During our former years, we had the luxury of great surplus in the categories of equipment, energy, and compensation, continued the president. Of course, that was 13 years ago, which is why we have our incredibly efficient Savings Plus program. The dull blue projector screen had the logo, PowerPoint. I'm trying to think. Two problems I'm kind of getting at the more development story level is like Roy doesn't have anything he wants or a goal. This makes nor is there much conflict in these scenes. Darkwing DuckTales, have a nice life, good friend. Banned forever. May the axe fall with justice and destruction. And you gotta pay me first. I'm a dirty girl. Right, anyways. Enough with trolls. But Roy doesn't have a clear wants. Nor is there much conflict in these scenes, so there's not much driving me forward besides his problem, which he lives in kind of a shitty situation. We need some of the above, or the following scenes will feel. Yeah, it'll feel like we're just getting a lot of exposition, which is a risk. You do want to bring in that goal. What does he want? What does he care about? Even if it's not the main story want, you know? Because, like, let's say the main want of this, the main desire line of the story will be to save the princess. He doesn't have to have that desire line from page 1. His page 1 desire line could be like, I want a beer. I need to get a beer. And he has to, like, stop at nothing to get a beer. Or, you know, I want White Castle, whatever. And, you know, it can eventually discover the desire line. But in every scene, your character needs to want and be striving for something. And he just, right now, is kind of drifting along, bemoaning stuff, which, because he's not taking action or making any decisions, it slows the read down because he's not getting into any uncertainty. Because for this world, there is no conflict or uncertainty. He's in his want is being everyone to die for Meteor. Very true, but there's no way that he's going to ever take action on that. Like, so, like, you know, because he can't summon a meteor down, at least from what I know. So it's more like, you know, I want to be rich and have $1 million. You know, I can't do anything about that, but like, you need to make it concrete, a concrete want. Sorry, I could have been more specific. I'll add that in the note. A concrete want. In much the same way that some of the imagery was getting a little bit too abstract and you were losing your footing a little bit in terms of anchoring us in the scene, his one is to relocate. So yeah, so like, you know, let's see him negotiating with some people to try to get off planet, whatever. So that's good. Like, I need to relocate. I need to get out of here. I need to but that should be like pretty present, and he needs to start taking action. So a want, the reader only believes that something is a want when the character starts doing something about it. So I don't really know that. I think he's just, you know, it doesn't feel like that everyone to die from a meteor is like a legit want, nor the relocation, because he's just like, yeah, I kind of want to relocate, and then he goes to a meeting. We need to see him like negotiating with his manager and being like, I want to get off planet, or, you know, I want to get off, you know, 237. I want to go to mine 5. You know, that's the nice ones, mine 5. Like, and then he's negotiating with the manager. The manager's just like, shut up and go to your meeting. And then he, like, you know, mines for a while and he's pissed off. And then Kyle's like being bothersome and he like is mad because he got rejected. So he punches Kyle. And then Kyle's like, F you, man. I'm going to bone your wife because she's a big whore. And then, like, you know, and then so that's how you can expose all this exposition, but you tie it around the desire line. So you show him, like, you know, fail getting his want. He goes on tilt for a while and pisses off some people. And then in order to get back at him, you know, so that's the cause and effect chain you need to start building among your scenes. That would be like, that's like obviously like a bad example off the cuff, but like those are things to think about in terms of how do you start chaining it all together. Roy tried to build a picture of the stone he'd found and had been able to catch a glimpse of its color or make. How does he know it's a make? Yes. I would always say that's very true. One of the biggest problems every writer has is they start too early. They, you know, start us when the good parts start happening. Start us even after some shit has gone down. And they're like, you know, mopping up blood and he's like running through a hallway. Like, you know, that's like, you know, in media res, which is like usually a really powerful tool in terms of starting your plot. Hubai became rich, sailing S7, island off the coast of Florida. And he doesn't really have a shot at becoming rich. So how does he know this is valuable? He was so dismissive about it. Yeah, how does he know the stone is valuable? It would be near impossible to make enough to advance 2 people's positions. Would he be able to keep this from his wife? Her usual half-drunken demeanor would leave her clueless as to what he'd found. That wasn't a problem. To advance in line position while married was a process in itself. It's required to pay for both parties in the marriage to advance. Strange and evil thought dances away. Must have come the dark part of his soul. Well, I mean, if it's a strange and evil thought, we kind of assume it came from the dark part of his soul. Why don't we just say what it is? Like, you know, man, why didn't he just kill? Okay, so then he gets called up. So I like this. This is good. Mounting the conflict. Starting. You're editing 667 story. We are indeed. Welcome, Lyrebird Edits. How's it going? Welcome, welcome. We are indeed. Crystal Palace 1.0. How are you doing today, Lyrebird? To get the action happening. Good. Good. You there with the face covered in mud. Come down for me, said Fontaine, looking directly at Roy. And 2 seats down, the younger one. Yes, you as well. There are so many more of you. I could choose for my example. Let me actually check something real quick. Let's see here. Boodly-doo-doo-doo-doo. Ooh, fancy. Doing well, doing well. I've been enjoying 667's story. It's a fun one. It is quite delightful, I must say. Quite delightful indeed. Oh goodness, I'm in the wrong place. All right. Some miracle came out on stage. She would teach Kyle an overdue lesson on how to shut the F up. Are you there with the face covered in mud? Come down for me, said Fontaine, looking directly at Roy. And 2 seats down, the younger one. Yes, you as well. There are so many more of you I could choose for my example. How about the 2 of you? Come down here as well, he said, pointing with his bony fingers, turning a couple of younger men to join the unlucky few on stage. Kyle smirked at Roy. Roy glared at Kyle, and the others quickly made their way to the stage with their tail between their legs. Each stood in a row. It's probably okay because it's from his perspective, but is there something, this is a bit of a cliche. Is there an expression in their world that says the same thing? Like, could it be like they're, pickaxes, dragging behind them, That's a bad example, but you know what I mean. Like, those cliches, they're not necessarily bad. Not the end of the world, having something that's like commonly used. But you should always ask yourself, hey, is there something else I can use that will make it more impactful? Oh man, so many things. All the things. Work never sleeps. A sea of faces greeted him. Most of that expression, row of men extended from the president at center stage. Roy could see movement from behind the dark velvet curtains. Now, said Fontaine, how many of you understand the importance of this savings plus program? No one budged. Every head on stage turned downward as not to make eye contact with the president. With a smug look, Roy noticed that Fontaine was considerably shorter from this angle. How about you, said Fontaine, enlighten us on some of the reasons for the program's implementation. He handed the microphone to the first man in line, a taller guy who by comparison made Fontaine look no bigger than a child. He stuttered, I guess I need a bit more education on the program, sir. Is that so? Said Fontaine, snatching the microphone back like a cat swatting a fly. Let me give someone else a try then, shall we? The microphone was given to Kyle, sending a jolt of electricity down Roy's spine. He thought for sure he'd be the next to talk. Sensation rose and stimuli heightened. I don't know what that means. A little too much of a vague detail. Too much of an abstract detail. Does he like tense up? Does he sensation rose with the realization that he knew nothing of the savings program? General knowledge and the policies were required for every employee, no matter how boring the material. It was not a choice. Well, sir, Kyle said. Some sort of clever, fastidious remark was about to make its way out of Kyle's mouth. I think you're asking the wrong person. We should be asking just how much we enjoy the savings program, right, everybody? He flailed his arms in the air and waved forward, cutting off the president's stroll across stage. Not a single person responded. Nor looked in the direction. I know I'm not alone when I say that we all work here at Multicorp. Some, maybe like the name. I know you're a creative guy. You can. There's much creativity in the names. What are some other names that pack my punch? Yeah. Some even harder than we thought possible, but that's because we know that your hard work will pay off. With his performance bravado, the president stopped dead in his tracks, facing the far side of the stage and away from the others in line. Everyone, including Kyle, noticed this and swallowed hard. Seemingly struck with his first shock of nerves, Kyle stepped back in line and lowered his head. A deafening silence filled the room, highlighting each feminine step. Like, is he that much? Like this is a pretty big detail. This is a pretty... I don't know. So what is what does it actually look like? It sounds kind of neither a cough nor a whisper traveled the air, further intensifying the sick feeling that took hold of Roy's stomach. Beads of sweat dripped on the floor and created a puddle of sludge. Is he really pouring in sweat? That seems like extreme excessive sweating. Like if you're like dripping from your stomach, that's like really sweating. That's the exact reason I gathered you here today. Okay, middle and boots. Jet black silk suits marched into view. Each held a high-powered rifle. Okay, is he just going to massacre them all? Roy had seen these merciless killers on a few occasions. Multicorp deemed them necessary to keep on hand, but never had he seen so many in one place. Stage is bearing. So I don't know how he's associating with this with the item he'd found. A nervousness seeming overweight. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. How does he associate the troops with the item he'd found? I'm sure like the vague evil banter from Fontaine is I would say that I as the reader am drawing a different conclusion from the data I have than the character. It's always something a little bit risky. So if the reader's reading something and he's like, yeah, like Fontaine is planning on killing all of them because he's a freaking sadistic crazy person, which is what it starts to feel like, at least from like his like kind of villainous dialogue. I don't see how it relates to the item. So he's like, oh, they're bringing all these troops in because I found a thing on the way here. Like what? Like I don't see that yet. Maybe they talk about it during the speech. Like that would tell me, right? Like if during the initial speech they were like, hey, we are putting a $10 million reward and a free trip to blah, blah, blah for anybody who finds this object. And then, he doesn't turn him in because he's like, well, I don't trust them. I bet I can get way more money from someone else. And then pull him up on stage and then he's freaking out. That would, make that connection clear for me. How am I doing? I'm on page 10. You got me going. It's pretty good. There no need to be alarmed, everyone. Yeah, but to him, I agree with you, 667, but to him, he's been, as a character, so dismissive about finding this crystal. He's been like, crystal, put it in my pocket, don't think about it. That there's really been no stakes. He just kind of found a thing. And it also seems really surreptitious, because this is maybe more of a story note, but if he finds, the character has to sometimes earn their fortune, good or bad, right? So if he finds this super valuable crystal, he should kind of have been effed over first. So for example, maybe he went to the foreman trying to get his relocation. The foreman turned him down. He went on tilt and he was so pissed off. He got in a fight with Kyle and they're like, hey, you idiot. And Kyle's like, your wife's sleeps around. She's dirty. And then they get in this big brawl and then he gets put into the deep, the worst mine he can possibly go in. This really crappy pit. And he's working in the deep pits, the punishment area. And then he finds the crystal. That to me feels like the hero earned it, right? He's had the worst day ever and he finally finds this thing. And then they pull him out to go to this meeting. That has more I feel like if he just finds it randomly, the reader cares about it less than if he was earned it. One of the ones, for example, or one of the examples I give is Smish Smosh's screenplay, Magic Ferret, I think, where this kid finds this magic or laser sloth. But it's why that kid, in a children's book, or in a children's movie, it's especially important for it to tie into the flaw or the sin of the character. So especially the viewer will have to get a sense pretty early on of how this, strike of fortune is going to change the character forever and make him get to a place where he's going to choose between good or evil, between transforming or falling, right? So in this case, maybe he's angry and violent and he fights with Kyle. And then this is obviously it'll somehow solve his violence. So those are the types of things you want to try to tie in. Yeah. And that's fine. That is totally fine. No, it's totally in your world, you can sort of like Bob Ross, you can do whatever you want as long as you pull it off. And right now I'm cool. I'm not too much beef on the stone. I think the thing that I do beef with is if he finds a random stone, why does he suddenly think it's so important? If he finds it at the bottom of the pit of destiny, whatever, that maybe he has a reason to think it's important. Right now, this thought doesn't feel like it is contextual yet. No need to be alarmed, everyone. It's only a precaution. Nimble steps, he walks over to Roy. He smiled, revealing his perfect white teeth. 6 tiny leg appendages extended from the object gripped in the pale-specific hand. The legs reflected light on their metal edges. On this stage stands 4 fine men from Mining Fod 237 who are hard at work for several hours of the company's precious time until our meeting. Plenty of time to work towards your distance goals for the month. He waved the odd electronic device, still pacing back and forth. Perry's giving me some good news. Come stand in front of me. Pulling the man. Okay. Looks like you've not been touching axe all morning. No of you women helped today, my boy. I see no mark on your forehead whatsoever. I can't find a single speck of dirt on your shirt. What do you have to say for yourself? I'm, says the man. The shivering man laying on the top of his head. Yeah, this is kind of an obvious thought. I think if that's how his life ends, it would be a cruel fate. I don't know if I would interrupt. I think the interiority is good. I don't know if I would interrupt. Yeah, wait till a lull, or things quite. Oh, I misspelled it. This morning's transmission from superiors finalized our request to use capital punishment as a form of inspiration in order to achieve the optimum work output. As you can see, that's so nice. Why doesn't Roy just quit? Is he like an indentured servant? I'm kind of confused. This particular gentleman decided that wasting the company's time was not worth anything to worry about. He decided that today he might get by easily, even the bulk of blow to his fellow men. Well, the magnetic spark flashed from within the machine and sent his victim flying under the hard work floor, leaving him a pile of flesh and bone. So why the complicated machine to kill him? I mean, does it like monitor their work? It might. I'm sure you're aware that the waiting list to work for our company remains in the thousands. Any one of them would kill to have a steady job. To rid ourselves of the lazy F's who hold us back from our goals. We should achieve double what we're doing now. Bug scuttled up. That escalated quickly. But he did do the logical thing, which is I would have tried, like, why didn't he kill the old bastard? Guys in the car wouldn't be next. Roy began to contemplate doing anything, that his body wouldn't budge. So he just lets you to do the real work. Yeah, so my one comment is, like, the manager seems a bit of a foil. Where, he's obviously evil for evil's sake. Like, there's no like, how does he not know what real work is? Like, I mean, these guys are giving him good, reasonable explanations, and he's still like, I'm going to use my brain-destroying toy on you, monster attack. So I think that the prop is really cool, like the little monster. I would wonder why he just doesn't shoot them, why he has to use this complicated thing. But then two, like, he's criticizing all these workers for not being aware of, the medical protocol or something, the medical protocol or something, but, he doesn't seem to really know the work himself. So there seems to be a lot of, just him being bad because YOLO, where you really want him to have a purpose. Like, what does he want? What is he trying to accomplish? And it needs to make sense. It can't be like, he just thinks they're all, slackers. Like, no, he needs to be like, I actually need to kill people to, like, fuel my monster, and I'm going to use this as an excuse. Like, whatever. He needs to know it's a bullshit excuse. Like, he seems to be convinced, or he would be killed himself. Yeah. Maybe we see one on his head. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary. Yeah. Maybe it's just some of the execution. Like, he's kind of feels very villainous. But we'll also want to know, why do the superiors want to do that? Who's holding them accountable? Or do the superiors have stuff on their heads? Like, where's the want? Like, because, where's the desire line coming from? Right? Because if he doesn't want it, okay, the superiors are making him doing it. Okay, well, why are they doing it? What are they trying to get? And then you're like, okay, well, the superiors are making him do it. Okay. What do they care about so much? That part is a mystery until reveal later on. Okay. I think that's okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the revolt breaks out. Yeah, like, why didn't he, like... Yeah, I'm confused about why they don't just leave. Or like... well, so one, it's kind of like... Yeah, you're threatening to kill, like, a room full of, like, 1 million people. Like, what did they expect to happen? Except a huge-ass revolt. Like, I mean, they brought some more mercenaries, but obviously not enough. He took off like he was all surprised. So, that feels a little bit off. I also wonder, why are these slave workers putting up with it? Or they just drop their helmets and they're like, you know what? F you murderous bastards, I quit. Like, I'm kind of surprised that, like, people do that. I hope the reader goes, oh. So it doesn't make sense. Which doesn't make sense? That people would work in the mines? Because, like, there's a few things. Like, it's like, why do these people stay in the mines when they don't need to? They could leave and go work in a place where they don't get murdered for underperformance. Even though it sounds like work is hard to find, but you know what? Like, you're not going to provide for your family when you're dead. So obviously, staying alive and finding a shittier job is still a massacre of everyone. I would give some hints, maybe. I would give some hints as to why they massacre everyone. And it also just seems like kind of a, like, why does he have to announce the new feature? So if they're planning on massacring everyone anyways, why does he have to announce, like, the brain sucking thing? Yeah. So, like, I would just make sure that, to me, like, I think the scene is interesting. I'm still reading. I kind of want to see what happens, because there's conflict here. I think in the beginning, like, the first 2 or 3 pages start off pretty rough. So I would skip all the stuff with his wife, either make it like a really small scene. Yeah, the president isn't the manipulator, he's being used. Well, yeah, I think that's relatively clear, but it's sort of like, here, I'll finish chapter 1, but it's sort of like, but like, yeah, so, okay. So they told him to present this new brain destroying robot to everybody they're going to put on these people's heads who are underperforming. And they expected what? Like, I mean, I don't know why everybody didn't just leave. So at first I don't know why they revolted. Like, but I mean, maybe they just didn't want Roy to die. But they could have just been like, okay, Roy, you got killed, and then tomorrow we all quit, and you can bring in whoever wants to, like, gamble with their lives for the job. Um, or, yeah, I don't know why there was so much fanfare to just let it, if it was on purpose. Oh, the final bot. That's me. That's my brain. Someone maybe put a really long timer that just has final bot say derpy things. That's true. Okay. Yeah, it's tough. I think it's fine. I think the reader will play. I mean, the reader will bite. Like, they'll listen. I think honestly the biggest issue with chapter 1, I think, is like the memories. I think once you get into scene, like you've done. So once you get into a scene, like you've done, once Roy gets brought on stage, I feel like your flow and your style goes a lot better. I feel like when you're trying to put in all this exposition and what's going on, that's not working as well. So, like, those first 3 pages where he's talking about the meteor destroying the world and all this stuff, and remembering about his wife and the really hard day he had, and remembering how he doesn't like his wife, but he misses her and he's crying. That part, I think, probably needs to be reduced or cut. I would start either with him walking in, like, finishing up work in the mines and walking into the presentation, like, on page 2, and that's like page 2. Or adding more conflict before then that establishes some of the world, where, like, the foreman's like, listen, president's on my ass, that he's going to be in deep crap if he doesn't get numbers up. They're desperate. I can't have you go somewhere else right now to another planet, to his other rotation that he wants. You got to keep working here and get your ass to work right now. And then he fights with Kyle, and then, whatever that looks like. Anyways, the door, Kyle said, pointing to a glass behind the group of guards. Before thinking through, Kyle and Roy made a run for the door. They reached the open tile floor. Kyle skipped on the patch of blood, seeing him on the ground. Before Kyle could react, a flurry of bullets sprayed him like a hose, finishing him off, giving Roy a few seconds. I would take out that similes. Finishing him off and giving Roy a few seconds to put glass shatter indicators. Yeah, the ghost thing seems kind of... Yeah, so his interiority seems kind of off here, because he's, like, everybody he knows and works with just got slaughtered. And he's, like, running through this thing and, like, sees a ghost, and he's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, but I guess Kyle was right. Like, he's, like, kind of has his, has a very calm interior thought. Well, if ghosts were real, well, that'd be no better place for them to be after a massacre. So I guess that makes sense. So he's having this like very calm interior dialogue, while like while everyone just got massacred. So I would just work on that interiority. I'm gonna write it how I would write this maybe, and then we'll see Yeah. All right, I'll get going. Damn, Kyle. So like very quickly written, but that'd be like kind of like a way to maybe think about rephrasing that. He shook his head and disappeared through a solid tunnel wall. Royal would take his secret route out. How does he have a secret route? I feel like they're so heavily monitored. The only wound he had after the whole ordeal was caused by the object he had in his pocket. Whatever it was cut sharply into his thigh, dripping blood and staining his pant leg. Luck certainly seemed to be. I thought it was a baseball and round. All right. Well, that's chapter 1. Good job. I'm kind of curious to see what happens next. So if I was reading this, size and weight of a baseball. Gotcha. Interesting. Cool, man. I like it. I think you definitely have a good scene set up, and it's driving forward. You know, I'm curious to see what happens next. I kind of am like, oh well, now that his world is completely changed, what's going to happen? So that's good. It's a really good that doesn't happen all the time. I'm not, a lot of times I will not be curious about chapter 2. I actually am curious about chapter 2 in this case, which is fantastic. I do think you need to work on your scene work. You need to kind of do like what J.K. Rowling does, like establish, pause for a second, establish the scene, lay those paragraphs out really cleanly where you have like your kind of, your little like summary, and then it goes into more detail. Those can help with a lot of the clarity stuff you're working on. But yeah, overall, great work. And, we kind of talked about all those points earlier. So for people who are coming in late, that's all in the recording, which will be on here. But did you want me to delete this recording, which I can do? Let me know. But yeah, that's the show for tonight, guys. Take care, and have a good night from Final Boss. I'll find someone to host here so that you guys don't get bored. Later, everybody.